Okay, so this time I am recording. Welcome along to the So You've Done an Ironman Now What seminar. If I can just get people to pause for a quick minute and turn off your cell phone, or make sure it's turned off, and that you've got other web pages that all closed down to avoid distractions during the webinar. That way you can get maximum benefit out of the webinar. Also, if you can hold questions until I call for them, that way I can answer them as they come through in a consolidated fashion, and I can take the time to answer them fully rather than rush through and keep going with the content. We will take some pauses along the way to answer your questions as well, and I might answer your question as part of the webinar before it comes up. So first of all, who am I? I'm Ray Boardman. Why is this not going? There we go. I've been coaching professionally since 2000. I specialise in working with recreational and beginner athletes, and I've coached plenty of people to achieve their first Ironman or challenge event over the iron distance, as well as plenty of half Ironmans and people achieving personal bests and qualifying for Kona as well. I don't just coach anyone. I want to make sure that the coach and athlete relationship is right. So you get the most out of the relationship as a coach and athlete if you are to take me on as a coach, and also so it's a pleasurable experience for us both. If you work in the customer service industry, there's not always going to be a perfect fix or fit for every situation, and there's other coaches that are possibly better at me in some aspects. So I want to make sure the people I'm working with are a good fit for me and my style, and they're going to get the benefit out of it. As an athlete, I've completed or competed at Ironman 6 times. If we count the 2006 event that was cut short due to the weather. But I've done 6 Ironman events all up, including Challenge Wanaka in 2011. So Taupo in 03, 04, 07, 09 and 11 for the full distance, and then at Challenge also in 2011. So I did the double that year. There's a weather bomb at both events. Challenge Wanaka in 2011 was very, very windy. Even the top pro guys were struggling along at 15k an hour into the headwind that was blowing down there. And then a few weeks later in Taupo, it rained non-stop all day long. It was a planned pause or break to my Ironman career for at least 10 years. I've got no interest in breaking that 10-year plan. I'm busy focusing on a few other things at the moment. I do intend to come back to Ironman or iron distance events at some stage in the future. So that's a little bit about me and my background. This is me and my partner on a run around Lake Rotoiti recently. I enjoy getting out into the hills a bit more, and this Easter we're heading back up past there again, heading into a place called Blue Lakes, spending the weekend in there, making the most of the weather that is going to be average to not too bad over Easter in the Nelson Lakes region. So we're going to get in there and have a bit of time away from cell phone coverage and in the hills. Another picture of me with my daughter taking her up into the hills, this time in Marlborough. And as you can see, I do take a few selfies, both those were selfies. And there's a better photo of me taken by a professional photographer at the Wellington Half Ironman this year, back in January. So that is a better photo. Just before I get into the meat of the seminar, I just see a comment from Ben. Can you see the full screen now, Ben? My apologies, team. Let's try and work out what's going on. What does that do? Pause. Try now. How's that working, Ben? Can anyone else see the slides? Thanks, Rob. And Ben, I've got your answer as well. Let's turn that off. Let's try now. Any improvement now, team? My apologies, I'm not the most technically proficient person. Let's try changing to that. How are we looking now? Bingo, that's the one. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ben and John. Got that all now. So I'll just quickly clear these messages. So this is the screen that was showing when I was talking about who I am. I'll just quickly clear these messages now that we've got it sorted. I keep coming up and just clogging my screen up. I'm not sure if you see them off to the sides. Alrighty, so into it. There's a picture of me and my partner up Lake Rotoiti, inland from St Arnaud, with my daughter Miller in the hills of Marlborough. There's me at the Wellington Half Ironman. Now, before we get into the meat of the slides, this is one of my former clients. He's not currently training for anything, although he is about to come back on board, Matt, and he did a personal best over the Taupo Half Ironman back in December and took a massive 44 minutes off his time just through following a focused and structured training program. He's the sort of person, typical sort of athlete that I coach, works a full-time job. In Matt's case, he's a postie in the Manawatu, and it keeps him busy, and he fits his training around his work and other family commitments. So tonight, we're going to look at, and not necessarily this order, the slides go through in sort of a bit of a merged sequence where one topic merges into the next, looking at what to do next for those of you that have done an iron distance event, what you can do to improve for next year, when you should start training again, and what other options are out there for you event-wise. So first of all, what should you look at doing next? My advice around that is to challenge yourself. And you've got a number of ways you can challenge yourself. You can aim to do it again, but quicker or faster. So doing the same event. If you did challenge, then do that, but aiming to do it faster. Did Ironman, aim to do that again, but faster. Do something more challenging in a different way, either through being longer. Now, John Humphreys is with us tonight, and he's definitely taking that to the longer challenge. He's doing Ultraman over in Australia. That involves 3 days of back-to-back racing. Day one starts with a 10K swim that needs to be done under 6 hours. Then the bike ride, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Humps, but it's 220 something kilometers that you've got 6 hours to complete, or you've got 12 hours on day one to do the swim and the bike. So you've got 6 hours to do the swim, and you've got the remaining time left to the 12-hour mark to complete the bike ride. Actually, the bike must be a little bit shorter than that, because on day two, you've got a bike that goes for 12 or up to 12 hours that takes the total riding out to 421 kilometers. And then on day three, you've got an 84-kilometer run that you've also got 12 hours to complete it in. So that's taking it longer. You can look and find a hillier course option. So if you've done Taupo, then looking at doing Challenge Wanaka, same distances, but it's hillier. And Humps has just jumped on with a comment. Day one is the 10K swim, 140K bike, and then day two is a 281-kilometer bike, and then the 84-kilometer run. So that is taking the longer option. Or you could do something that's more intense, doing something that's shorter. You can do something that's shorter by distance, i.e. something like a half Ironman or a 70.3 or an Olympic distance race, maybe even trying to qualify for the New Zealand age group team. Or you can do something that's shorter in time due to it being a slightly easier course. So going from, if you've done Challenge Wanaka, maybe going up to Taupo and taking advantage of the faster course, even though it's the same distance. So because you're going to be going faster, you're going to be riding and running and swimming more intensely. So those are some different ways you can challenge yourself. once you've decided what you want to do or how you want to challenge yourself, I strongly advise people to set some goals around that. So setting some SMART goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So what we might look at, if someone wants to volunteer, maybe one of their goals for the coming season, whether it's to do an Ironman or something else, and we can set some hypothetical or some guided type SMART goals for that. If someone's feeling game enough to volunteer something, and thanks Humps for volunteering the goal of beating 12 hours for an Ironman. So that is reasonably specific at an Ironman. We can probably make it a little bit more specific by saying something along the lines of beating or going under 12 hours at Ironman New Zealand in Taupo in 2017. So that would make it measurable because we've got that under 12 hour mark. It's achievable in terms of what Humps has done in the past. It's making a number of small gains across all three disciplines. And Humps, if you can just jump on and give us what your personal best time is over the Iron distance, or over an Ironman. You've done a few in both Australia and New Zealand. So the fact that it's only a small chunk of time off each of the three disciplines means it's going to be achievable for him. It's relevant. So Humps has just replied with his personal best of 12:20 over in Aussie and a 12:37 over in New Zealand. Very relevant to what he wants to achieve. And by adding in that Ironman New Zealand in 2017, puts that time constraint on it as well. So it's not like, oh, we'll get around to it next year. It's specific to, yes, it is happening next year, and there's no ifs and buts about it. So if we look at his PB of 12:20 from over in Australia, Humps sort of swims around the 1:15, 1:20 mark. So maybe looking at taking 5 minutes off that, taking 5 minutes off the bike, and then 10 minutes off the run. And getting to the end of the bike and being able to run reasonably well is probably going to be the biggest factor that will create a big improvement in time for setting or achieving those goals. So before we move on and look at a couple of or a few different things in terms of planning to improve for next year, I'll just show you another client. This is Lisa. It's her competing down in Challenge Wanaka in 2012, I think, off the top of my head. She went down there. She's one of the athletes that set the goal of doing an Ironman. She chose Challenge Wanaka for that, to cover off that distance. And once she had done that event, that's all she was going to do. I just see we've had another person come and join us. Where's that gone? Lanier, welcome back. Good to have you on board. So it's good to see you jumping in and joining in the seminar. So Lisa, she's a working mother, got some children, as well as working a full-time job for the Ministry of Education. So she was down in Challenge Wanaka. She had her whole family, husband or partner, and their children down there. It was really fun to be involved out there supporting her on the course. Kept on catching up with her and the kids. The kids would run along beside her for a few hundred meters each time she would come through past them, and keep her motivated and encouraged. And one of her big things she wanted to do was to show a healthy lifestyle for her kids, but also manage the training around her family and around her work commitments. So there's another typical client of the sort of person that I work with. So how do you improve for next year? And one of the sayings I often work with is 6 Ps. Proper preparation prevents pretty poor performance. Or, as you can probably read there, there's an alternative word for pretty that also delivers the same sort of message. One of the key aspects is to set a plan around that. And there's the training plan. And that's where a coach will come on board and help you be able to plan appropriately the training side of it, but also guide you through other aspects of the training in terms of equipment choices, nutrition guidance through that. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about the training in a few slides further down the track. The other side of the plan is the support plan. Now, the coach can provide support with the training advice and the advice around equipment and nutrition and the other aspects of the sport, but you do need the support of a spouse or a significant other as part of your build-up, and having that family on board is really important to help develop that. You're going to be tired from the training that you do. Your training is going to take up some time as away from doing other normal family or household commitments. So you do need the support of your family, particularly a spouse or significant other, so that they can either pick up some of the slack or be at least understanding of the fact that, hey, you're not too keen on going and mowing the lawns or doing the dishes because you've just finished a 4 or 5 hour bike ride today, but you'll catch up with those roles and responsibilities tomorrow or the day after, or something along those lines, whatever you work out with them. They need to be behind it and help you through the training. It can be quite a lonely experience for them, and we often talk about the Iron Widow or the Iron Widower, where the significant other is left behind while you're out doing all your training and preparing. So you do need to be mentally tough, but the best way to be mentally tough is to have that plan and support network in place. So if we look at a typical build-up through to either Ironman or Challenge Wanaka, what I typically guide my clients to do is to do a winter-based marathon, maybe Wellington or Christchurch, Taupo, Dunedin. Taupo is a really good one. It's a little bit better placed than Wellington or Christchurch, and also Dunedin in terms of being an August-based event. So it does give you plenty of time to build up to other events later on in the November-December region in terms of getting some long cycling events, K2 or the Lake Taupo Cycle Challenge around Taupo, before leading into a half Ironman of some description, Iron Māori or Taupo, Rotorua, Porto Tauranga as well. Welcome, Rod. I just see you've managed to log on and join us, so welcome to you as well. Just currently talking about a typical periodisation or build-up for Ironman. So starting off with a winter marathon somewhere during winter, then building through to a longer cycling event, K2, round Taupo, and then building into an early season half Ironman with Iron Māori, Taupo, Rotorua and Porto Tauranga all being very popular choices that still leave you a bit of time for training through to the big kahuna of either Challenge or Ironman. I'll show you a typical structure to that in a little bit. Oh, actually, it's the next slide. Sorry, I'm just grabbing a quick drink of water. So the typical build-up, starting with initially some recovery after Ironman in March, or if you've done Challenge towards the end of February, we're now talking having March to recover, and then build up through to a marathon in the middle of August, or a couple of months either side, depending on which ones you're choosing to do, and then another build up through to the longer cycle events in the half Ironman early season, and then you've got a little bit of time, depending on which one you've done, building through to the main events in February. And I do say Ironman's in February, although the exact date is the start of March. Typically, for the first Saturday in March being Ironman Day, the Monday of that week is going to be a February. And so in terms of the layout of the program, I'm always talking about, or 6 times out of 7, I'm talking about Ironman being in the last week of February in terms of the overall training plan for it. Now down on this next row, you'll see a number of abbreviations, and FI basically covers off the first phase of training that I plan for my athletes preparing for Ironman. And the first basic block of training after a recovery is looking at foundation injury prevention. So we're preparing the body, getting them ready to we're preparing them for the training that's going to come after that. After the FI phase, we move into the EQ, or the early quality, into the transition quality before moving into the final quality phase, and preparing for the main event, being the marathon, or if we're talking about the November or February phase of final quality, we're talking about the half Ironman or the full distance for that preparation. So if we talk about using a Taupo marathon and then the Taupo half Ironman and then Taupo Ironman, from this year, we're talking about a couple of weeks recovery, then a 20-week build-up to the Taupo Marathon, an 18-week build-up as we focus on the Taupo Half Ironman, and then that leaves us another 12 weeks left to focus on the full distance Ironman, which gives you plenty of time to build up, recover a little bit, and then build up to the next key event as part of your build-up. Here's a picture of one of my clients that did his first Ironman a couple of weeks ago at Taupo. He clocked through in 13:15, and he came on board relatively late in the piece, and we changed the focus of his training so he can train smarter rather than harder. He was typically going out and spending most weekends training all day, every day, and we changed it to streamline it, focus his training at specific and appropriate intensities based on his current level of fitness, and we managed to build him up and improve the efficiency of his heart and lungs and make him a lot more effective over the full distance Ironman event. It also allowed him to have a bit more time with his family over the weekend as well, and not be so drained. And that was the biggest thing for his wife, who I got to meet at the Wellington Half Ironman. And she was really grateful for having him around home a little bit more, rather than basically being an absent husband over the weekend and then absent husband during the week with work and training. So we got the most out of him and managed to fit in all his training and get him to a successful first-time finish. Now, before we go into the meat of each and every session, we'll just take a quick pause here to answer any questions on the typical build-up if anyone has them. And also I'm going to throw out another poll. If you can let me know how many iron distance events that you've done as part of your build-up, that would be great. Good, I can see some replies coming in. I think that's most of you. It will give you another 20 seconds or so to reply. There we go. So I just want to confirm that everyone can see the screen again, and it's come back on nicely. Thanks, Ben, for the reminder to record it as well. Yes, it is being recorded. And thanks for letting me know about the slide with Joe on it as well. That's appreciated. So in terms of the background of people, we've got one person here who's done 8+ Ironman, a person who's done 3 to 8, and another person with a single Ironman under their belt, as well as a couple of you that haven't done any at all. So I'll just quickly share those results. You can see, there we go there. Just before we go on, if the person who's done 8+ can just flick me a quick message by writing in the question box, letting me know what events they've done, that'll be great. We might draw on some of that a little bit later on, if you don't mind. So with any training, if we're to go out and sprint 100 meters, we're not going to be able to sustain that, or if we give our true best effort over 100 meters, then we're not going to be able to maintain that. And I've just seen we've just been joined by Helen, so welcome, Helen. Really good that you've been able to make it. Pleased to see you here as well, so welcome. So if we're trying to sprint over 100 meters and give it our absolute best, we might be able to do that in sort of between sort of 18 to 30 odd seconds, depending on our ability. And that's going to be the very top end of intensity. It'd be great if we could maintain that over a kilometre or over 5Ks. But the reality is, when we extend the distance out, the intensity needs to drop off so we can maintain it. And if we take that a step further, going out to a half marathon and a marathon, the intensity drops down again. Regardless of whether we're talking about running or cycling or swimming or even something like kayaking or another sport, we can't maintain the absolute max intensity that we do over a short duration of a few seconds over longer distances of a few minutes, and we can't maintain those paces or intensities for a few hours. So we need to be smart about how we try and plan and structure our training. The Ironman event is a very long event. We're talking a number of hours, up to 17 in some instances, and the time you're out on the course is going to be an indication as to how intense you can run that based on your ability. You run it or competing as intensely as you can is going to be a different level of intensity compared to someone like Cameron Brown or Meredith Kessler, who are at the sharper end of the race. So I use a simple 5-point scale to indicate sort of the level of intensity for both training and racing purposes. And level 1, that sort of pace, it's nice and relaxed. If you're on a bike, the amount of power generated is minimal, and the heart rate, whether you're swimming, cycling, or running, is relatively low, but it's still above your resting levels. Right now, if you take your heart rate, you'd probably find it somewhere between 50 and maybe 75, 80 beats per minute. But a lower intensity recovery type run or bike or swim will get the heart rate up, depending on personal genetics. We could be talking sort of 90 to 100 beats per minute, or maybe as high as 130, 140 beats per minute, which it typically is for me, cycling or running. And that sort of level, we're able to maintain a conversation with a training partner without any issues at all. The intensity will assist in moving blood and other waste products, i.e. lactic acid, to the liver and kidney to be filtered out by the body. But at this intensity, we're not really achieving much of a training effect. The key way, without having some specific physiological measurements to compare to, is looking at the conversation test. If you're training with someone, can you hold a conversation with them without getting out of breath? If so, you're probably in the recovery, the level 1, maybe even the bottom end of the level 2. And it's once again, the pace is nice and relaxed, although a little bit more effort is applied compared to level 1. At the effort level, you'll create some beneficial biochemical and anatomical changes within the body that's enhancing your physiology. Key one there that's occurring is the number of mitochondria in each active muscle fiber is being enhanced, as well as improving the efficiency of the heart and lungs. Now, the mitochondria, they're just small, what are known as organules. They're inside each muscle fiber, but inside the majority of cells within the body. And this is where energy, it's not really created, but it's transferred into a usable source. So they're known as the powerhouse of any muscle cell, and they're what allows you to initiate the contraction of the muscles and develop that strength. At the level 2 intensity, you're improving the efficiency of heart and lungs, so you're getting better at getting the oxygen out of the air or the oxygen out of the air that you breathe into your lungs, and then from there into the bloodstream and moving it off to the working muscles. It's very beneficial, particularly for endurance athletes, and it'll also maximize recovery if you're a more of a strength or anaerobic athlete, which, going by the fact you've joined a webinar about training for Ironman, you probably aren't a strength or anaerobic athlete. So the sort of people we're talking about, team sports players, particularly that require a high degree of strength or power, such as forwards and rugby, or maybe other sports such as wrestling or boxing. Level 3, we're starting to step things up a little more. if you're trying to have a conversation with a training partner, you won't be out of breath per se, but you'll be needing to catch your breath between sentences, recover a little as part of your conversation. So shorter sentences with a bit of recovery in between to catch your breath. At that level, you'll be increasing the capacity of the body to store glycogen in the muscles, and you'll be further enhancing the efficiency of the heart and lungs. When we step it up to level 4, and this is the sort of pace that we can maintain for about 60 minutes. If it's any longer than that, we're probably looking at level 3. We're starting to go slightly anaerobic at this level, and it can't be maintained for too long, but you can comfortably do it for the 20 minutes, and you can stretch it out to that 60-minute mark. At this level, your conversation is going to be short, and it's based around short sentences of a few words at a time, and then you really need to catch your breath between sentences. Let's see, a quick question from Ben there. Yes, it should be. What's going on there? No. Why are those slides not showing? Sorry about this, team. We'll try and get this sorted. Doesn't seem to be allowing me to turn that to share that screen. Just going into the settings. No. Oh, actually, I know what I need to do. Hide the results. There we go. Sorry, just flick through this. It should be working now. If you can let me know, someone, if that's going through. Bingo. Thanks, team. Thanks for making me aware of that. Okay, so level 4, a greater intensity. You can hold it for about 60 minutes at the max. And you're going to be starting to get out of breath. That level of conversation, short sentences with a few words at a time, and then catch your breath. You're increasing your ability to produce and clear and utilize lactic acid from the system, and it's going to increase your lactate threshold, give you the tolerance to work at that higher intensity for a little bit longer, making you a bit more fitter. However, this is not the intensity that you're going to be typically racing Ironman at. We can use that sort of intensity to enhance your top end, but it's not going to be the be-all and end-all of training for an Ironman. So the next level up, VO2 max sort of intensity, the level 5, and that's the top level discussed here. It's the highest level we can maintain for a few minutes at a time, where we're increasing our maximum uptake of oxygen. It increases the size of the heart and its cardiac output, i.e. how much blood it can pump with each beat and within each minute. This level you'll be sucking in oxygen and only really able to grunt and groan. Across that whole spectrum, level 2 is where we're going to be doing the majority of our training for an Ironman to improve our efficiencies. And each of us are capable of exercising at all those intensities, regardless of how fit you think you are or aren't, and it will create an equal amount of discomfort in us all. The difference between them is how fast we're traveling at those various levels. A fitter, faster athlete is going to be going a lot faster or generating more power than an unfit or beginner athlete at level 2. They were running side by side at the same pace, i.e. Cameron Brown running along at 4-minute Ks like he does at the end of an Ironman. I can run 4-minute Ks comfortably as well, not necessarily at the end of an Ironman, and not necessarily for, well, definitely not for a full marathon. We might find that the fitter athlete, i.e. Cameron Brown, is at level 1 or 2, while I'm up at level 4 and working really hard at that 4-minute pace whilst running. The fitter athlete will be able to maintain that pace for hours because it's their level 2, whereas compared to me at my level 4, I'm probably going to be starting to want to pull the pin after about 35-40 minutes and might be able to push it on a little bit past that. Someone else, that 4 minutes per K, might be up in the level 5 sort of region and only able to last 5 minutes, and then they can't keep up. If we made the fitter athlete run at their level 5, so if we use Cameron Brown as the example, it might be around the 3 minute per kilometre mark. They're only going to be able to hold that pace for a few minutes as well, but they're obviously going to cover a lot more distance in that few minutes as the beginner athlete would there as well. Any questions on intensity at this point? Feel free to write questions in the comment box there before we move in and start looking at some of the key sessions, swimming, cycling and running, in each of the 4 phases of the training. As part of that, I've got a really great session that will develop your mental toughness. I know, Linnea, you're keen to learn about some techniques and tips to develop the mental toughness on the run, particularly when the day is getting long and tough, like a hot day down in Wanaka or up in Taupo. Got a reasonably quiet group question-wise today. Don't be shy about asking those questions, but we'll move on and look at some of the key technique sessions. So in the foundation injury prevention phase, the key things we're working on here is working on improving your efficiency, particularly with technique and drill work, to develop your technique so you can move through the water more efficiently, more effectively. What we're looking at doing, or if we trained fitness and purely fitness, we'd get really good at swimming with our poor technique, because none of us are Olympic level swimmers, so we've all got plenty of room to improve our swimming technique so we can propel ourselves through the water a lot more easier, a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently. We need to, if we can make improvements with our efficiency and our technique, then fitness can take us to a higher level, get us up to swimming faster for longer and further, as opposed to just swimming more efficiently, or putting in a lot of effort for not much more gain, because our swimming stroke is what's holding us back. It's the limiting factor and not allowing us to swim fast. So an example of a swim session in the foundation injury prevention phase will be something along the lines of what's listed here. So starting with a 1,000-meter warm-up, and that's working on the general aerobic conditioning. It's all low intensity, level 1, level 2 stuff. Get the heart and lungs just starting to work, and get the blood flowing through the body. Then take the time to focus on some technique, doing an example there, 16 repetitions of 50 meters, focusing on a drill. Now, drills are just where you're focusing on a different aspect of technique, with a number of different drills. And after this, I'll send through some links to some YouTube videos. And I see you've just asked a question, Helen. I'll get onto that shortly. I'll continue going through the example. I'll send through some links to some different drills that you can include in your training that I've got on YouTube videos. And welcome, Naf. I just see you've joined us recently as well, so welcome along. After we've done a set of 16 repetitions of 50 meters focusing on the drill, look at just doing some easy swimming. So this is level 1 intensity, swimming focused on technique. Repeating those 2 sets again, the 16 by 50 meters drill, and then another 200 meters focusing on the technique before doing the cool down. And that will give us a good session that will focus on our technique, as well as on our general aerobic conditioning. I see Helen's asked the question, is it true triathletes only use arms and not kicking to save legs for cycling and running? Is it true? The answer is yes. Should it be true? I tend to say no, it shouldn't. The kick doesn't provide much effort to do. It doesn't use much energy. So by not kicking, you're not saving much of the legs for cycling and running. Cycling and running, your legs are moving in a cyclical fashion, whereas in the kick for swimming, you're moving in an up and down fashion. It's not cyclical. So we're using a different motor pattern to start with. The other key aspect of the kick is to provide you balance and keep you horizontal in the water. By not kicking, the legs are going to be hanging down, creating extra drag. So it's going to require greater upper body effort to pull yourself through the water because you're not getting the propulsion as well as the balance from the legs. So you're probably actually going to use more energy through not kicking than if you do kick. So you're going to have more left for cycling and running by actually kicking. There is a misconception out there that you shouldn't kick while swimming in the swim leg of a triathlon to save your legs. I do disagree with that and encourage people to use the best swimming technique possible so you can be most effective and efficient through the water. Good question there, Helen. Thanks for that. So moving on into the next phase of training, into the early quality, we're starting to get a little bit of shorter speed work in, as well as some threshold work, while still continuing to work on our technique and drill work and having some aerobic conditioning as well. So the example here that I've got listed is a 600 meter warm-up, 8 by 50 meters, where we're working on both drill and swimming. So the 50 meters is broken up one length doing the drill, getting to the far end, turning around, tumble turning or touch and turn, whatever method you use, and then swimming a length straight away. So the first length is doing the drill work where you're focusing on a different aspect of the technique, and then the next length straight into it with no rest. We're incorporating that into our technique, and the body is learning to adapt and utilize it straight away. The next set there is what's known as a broken 200, where you swim 200 meters as fast as you can, have a 30-second rest interval. RI stands for rest interval, and then you're doing some shorter sprint works by doing 4 by 50 meters, which is another 200, but it's broken up, hence the name broken 200, and you only have a 10-second rest between each of those 4 sprints. So once you've done the 200 complete, then the broken 200, you're straight into repeating that a total of 6 times. The challenging part of this set is the fact that after the 450, you get the 10 seconds rest, and then you're straight into 200 meters before you get your next rest. So it's a short rest and into a longer swim. And then finishing that whole workout with a 200 meter cool down, back down at that level 1 to assist with the recovery. So in this session, we're working on the technique and the drill with the 8 by 50s. Then we're working on the threshold work with the 200s, as well as the shorter speed work with the broken 200s. Now in this phase, not every session is going to be like that, where we're incorporating all 3 of those key aspects for that phase, but some sessions might focus on the shorter speed more than the threshold or more than the technique. Other sessions might focus more on the threshold or the technique compared to the shorter speed. So that is a great way to break that up. Moving into the next phase, into the transition quality, we're starting to incorporate a lot more interval and threshold pace work. We're continuing doing some drill and technique work. The example I'm putting here is a 600 meter warm-up, same as before, doing 12 reps of 50 meters, broken down as we did before with the 25 drill, 25 swim, and then we're into a set of 200 of 20 by 100 meters, and we're building up 1 through to 4 and having a 20-second rest interval. What the build 1 to 4 simply means is that we get faster every 4. So the first one might be done at a steady pace, the second one done at a fast pace, third one at a faster pace, and then the fourth one done at the fastest pace. The fifth one, back to that steady pace, the sixth one, fast, seventh, faster, fastest for the 8th, and so on until we've done all 20. The next set as part of that program is simply repeating the drill work we've done before to continue that, and then a 200-meter cool down. Now just bear with me quickly before we move on to the final quality phase. I'm going to grab a quick drink. Okay, so the final quality phase, this is where we start bringing in the most specific Ironman pace training. We still include some threshold work, as well as doing some drill and technique work. So the example here starts off with a 1,000-meter warm-up, 8 by 50 meters, done as we've done in the previous examples, a drill for the first length, the second length, or if you're in a 50-meter pool, changing from the drill to the swim partway or halfway down. The main set, 2 by 1,000 meters with a 60-second rest interval, and then finishing off with 8 by 50 sprints with only 20 seconds rest, and then into a 200-meter cool down. Now I know a couple of you are keen on some a lot more specific example of workouts, and as part of my coaching blog, coachray.nz, every Saturday I put up a range of different workouts, but I've also recently released my first ebook, 12 Weeks to an Ironman Swim PB, Swim Faster with Smart Training, and it's a full 12-week program with 3 workouts per week. It's fully periodized to ensure you get the best performance within those 12 weeks. It's available by digital download, and it's only $9 of purchase prior to Easter. The price is going up on Good Friday. So if you do want to take advantage of that for only $9, the link is down there, or just go to Qwik.Kiwi and click on the store in the top menu. I'll email that link out through to you afterwards as well. So it's a great purchase with 3 workouts a week for 12 weeks to work you through to ensure that you're swimming faster over Ironman distance compared to week 1 and getting your best performance. Alrighty, so moving on to your key bike sessions. If we break this down by phase, the foundation injury prevention phase to start with starts off with long, low intensity riding. We're developing that aerobic efficiency. We're gradually progressing out those long rides so we can handle the phase of it. I just see I've got a quick question from Lanier. What sort of intensity is the 1,000 meters done at? It's done at typical Ironman pace. So we're talking level 3, maybe the last part of it up at level 4. So I hope that answers your question, Lanier. So the foundation injury prevention phase, we're developing that aerobic efficiency. We're getting the body more efficient and at getting the oxygen out of the air into the bloodstream and into the working muscles. So we're talking level 2 type rides, maybe parts of those level 1. So the typical long ride, the steady rides, although they're a shorter duration, they are the same intensity, and we're getting the same sort of training benefits out of them, except we don't require as much recovery afterwards because they're not as long and not as taxing on the body. Moving into the early quality phase, we'll continue with the long, low intensity riding. We'll start incorporating runs off the bike if we haven't been doing them from the outset. Each week we'll probably look at including a single high intensity interval type session into the program that will develop the top end aerobic capacity as well as the lactate buffering, as well as developing leg strength. An example there is a set of 5 by 3 minute hill reps. So you'd ride for your warm-up, ride to a base of a hill, and then ride as hard as you can for 3 minutes up the hill. Look at and make a mental note of where you get to after that 3 minutes. Turn around, cruise back downhill for your recovery. As soon as you get to the bottom, turn around and head back up again. Repeating that a total of 5 times. Each time you head back up, make a mental note of where you got to and try and get past that point on the next rep. If you do this really well and put in a lot of effort on the first one, you're going to fatigue yourself too much and you won't get close to where you got to on the second, third, fourth, and further reps. But if you take the first one too easy, you'll easily surpass it. So you do want to be putting in a decent amount of effort and not and not taking things too easy. The best, most reliable, or the best session you can do is being nice and consistent throughout it, keeping it nice and getting to the same point, give or take a little bit each time. So as we move into the transition quality phase, we'll continue with the long, low-intensity ridings, running off the bike. Start looking at including some threshold intervals in there. Example of maybe 3 by 8 minutes threshold pace, or the level 4 with a 2-minute rest interval. And as we build through the season, increasing the duration we spend at threshold, so might advance onto something like 3 by 12 minutes at the threshold or level 4 intensity, with 3 minutes rest interval in between. So going from 24 minutes up to 36 minutes at that higher intensity within the workout. Moving on to the final quality phase, the key session each week for an Ironman athlete is the long, low-intensity ride. We can also include some longer duration threshold intervals in there. And the example is, say, 5 by 10 minutes threshold with only 2.5 minutes rest interval, or up to 4 by 15 minutes threshold for with a recovery of 4 minutes between. So we're starting to get 50 to 60 minutes within a workout at that higher intensity. So that's a series of examples of the key bike sessions. Any questions on that before we move on to the run sessions? So Linnea, in terms of how long the phases are, they're going to depend on how long you've got for the build-up. We discussed that at the start of the webinar that I think you missed, but I am recording this and I will be releasing this to all people registered for the webinar, so you will be able to go back and have a look through and catch up with that part that you missed. But if we're talking a 12-week build-up, we're looking at three weeks in each of the phases. A 24-week build-up is going to be 6 weeks in each of the phases. In between, things vary up a little bit depending on a number of factors, looking at where the strengths and weaknesses of the athletes are, what they're trying to achieve, what they're training for. So it does vary from case by case. I see there's a couple of questions there from Ben. What do you use as the main feedback? Intensity factor, training stress score, or just perceived exertion? It depends on the athlete and what training tools they've got. If you're training with a power meter, then intensity factor and training stress scores are good measures for that. They're a little bit advanced in terms of what we're discussing in this webinar, but I've written a couple of blog posts that touch on them. So what I might do is I'll flick all the links out relating to that to everyone afterwards. So those that are going, well, what the hell is intensity factor or training stress score, which you're obviously well aware of, Ben, but others might not be, so they can catch up with that. So to answer your question, depends on what feedback tools the athlete has got available. Some people just train by perceived exertion. Others go right through using heart rate, power meters, training pace. Just see, I've got a question there from you, Naf. Won't be a second, we'll get through to that. You certainly can do the rides on the trainer road. For those that aren't aware, trainer road is software that you link through from your Garmin device or other training tool, and it plays a pretty cool, or you can have videos playing in the background and monitor and track heart rate or power or a couple of other metrics, cadence, depending on what tools you've got connected to, and track it. That is a good way of really monitoring it. Those that use Training Peaks, you can link through to Trainer Road from there and upload directly. So yes, you can. But I'm also a big believer in getting out and spending some time on the road. Really encourage my athletes to get outside, particularly for the long bike ride. spending 4 to 5 hours on a wind trainer or an exercycle can be very monotonous. Some of you, and I'm looking at Humps here because I coach him and know that he's been in situations where he's had to, his only option has been to train indoors on an exercycle while serving in East Timor, preparing for Ironman, because it wasn't safe on the road. Certainly develops an amount of mental resilience by forcing yourself to literally suffer through those sessions. But the key thing with Ironman, and to do a fast Ironman and perform relatively highly, as both Mark Allen and Dave Scott state, it's not the fittest person that wins Ironman, it's the person who's got the greatest ability to suffer will win Ironman. So yes, you can do it on trainer road, but it's important to get outdoors, practice the balance skills, practice handling your bike in a variety of conditions, whether it's wet, windy, or otherwise, or a really nice day. Then it's important to have experience riding that. If all you do is train indoors, when it comes to race day, riding the bike outdoors it's not necessarily going to be a foreign concept, but it's not going to be your most the one you respond to riding a bike on a wind trainer where it's locked upright more effectively than outdoors where it's on the road and you've got balance and a few other considerations. Alrighty, so we'll move on to the key run sessions now. Looking at the foundation injury prevention phase, build up the long runs, once again at the low intensity, same as the long bike rides. And the example there is the long runs as well as the steady runs. Shorter duration but same intensity. So if you're using pace, pace zone 2, which is the equivalent of, pace zone 3, which is the equivalent of level 2 on the levels that I discussed before. During the early quality phase, continue with the long, low intensity runs. We're now starting to incorporate a single high intensity interval session weekly. And that session's once again to develop the top end aerobic capacity as well as the lactate buffering. It'll also develop leg power. An example there is 4x4 minutes hill reps. So very similar type of session to what we would have done during that phase during the bike or on the bike. Obviously we're going through a different dynamic, but both of them are working against gravity. As we move on into the transition quality phase, we're starting to introduce harder efforts into the long runs, as well as including threshold intervals. And a really great session, and I know it's Lanier, I think, you had a question via when you registered, I can't see it, how to be mentally tough on the run when the day is long and tough. The progressive run here is a really good way of developing that toughness, and it's building through, starting off with 60 minutes at the level 2, spending 40 minutes at the level 3, and then the 10 minutes before the cool down at level 4. So you're working hard towards the end when you're most fatigued, so you're going to gain a lot out of this. And I know, Ben, you also had a question about using the MAF method of training, which is popularized by Phil Maffetone. It's a really good method. It is often misrepresented that, and same with Arthur Lydiard's training, it's often misrepresented that all it's doing is training at that one low intensity. In the early phases of training, yes, that is what you're doing. You're building up the aerobic efficiency. But the important part of this is that you do include the high intensity trainings later on as part of the specific work as you're getting into your event. Now, if you're training for an 800-meter race like Peter Snell and the likes that Arthur Lydiard was training, it's more important to include more speed work later on at the higher intensities compared to what Phil Maffetone did with the likes of Mike Pigg and Mark Allen, who are top-level triathletes back in the late 80s, early 90s, where they're training for an 8-9 hour event. So there was a lot less intensity because of the longer duration event, but it still had that intensity in there after they'd built up their maximum aerobic function, hence where the MAF comes from. The maximum aerobic function was built in the early phases before adding appropriate speed work on after that. So hopefully that helps you out, both Lanier and Ben, with that sort of session, including that. And as you go through and progress your fitness, you can decrease the amount of time you spend for that. That's a 2-hour run. You can decrease the amount of time in level 2 and either increase level 3 or level 4 duration. So you're spending more time at those higher levels once you've built that fitness. As we move into the final quality phase, continue with the harder efforts within the long runs, continue with the threshold pace work. And here's another example of a run that I think it adds up to 2 hours and 8 minutes, but starting with a warm-up at level 2 for 10 minutes, and then going into a pre-fatiguing set of 4 by 5 minutes at level 4 with only a minute rest interval in between. Once you've done those 4, run for 60 minutes at level 2, and then repeat the set of 4 by 5 minutes at level 4 with only 1 minute rest. By the time you get to that point, we're talking an hour 40-ish into the run, you're going to have an element of fatigue already, and so you're going to get a lot of benefit from that type of session. It is a lot tougher session to do that compared to the progressive run, and you can certainly include, and I do include, progressive runs in the final quality phase, particularly for marathon runners and Ironman athletes. So here's another quick story about one of my athletes, Shane, as shown. I trained him for Ironman about 5 years ago. He did a couple of Ironmans up in Taupo. Since then, he's gone back to some of his old sports, played a little bit of rugby, got into CrossFit for a bit, but ended up injuring his back. And for the last couple of years, he hasn't really been able to do much. So he touched base with me just before Christmas and said, hey, look, I can't run, I can't ride my bike because of my back, but I can swim. I haven't swam since I did Ironman back in 2010, but I want to have a crack at swimming across Lake Taupo. So we built a structured training plan going from 0 to hero over 8 weeks and got him through successfully. Swimming and doing a bit of stretching was the only training he was able to do. And so we structured the program to build up his swimming fitness, build up his endurance, enhance his technique, and move him through to doing reasonably well at Taupo. So we're starting to get towards the end, and but before we do, just are there any more questions about the sessions that I just talked about before we start talking about different equipment options that can assist you with preparing for a successful Ironman build-up? So how many sessions per week? Good question there, Nath. It's going to depend on your current level of fitness. Some people I start off with only 6 sessions a week because they're coming from a position of being either relatively inactive, coming back from an injury and their fitness is lacking, or they've just had a really good break for whatever reason. Other people are starting off really reasonably fit, and so they're able to handle and withstand a greater number of sessions per week. But typically I like building up to fitting in 3 swims, 3 bikes, and 3 runs a week, maybe a couple of strength sessions depending on the goal of the athlete and how much time they've got available. I do like including strength sessions, particularly for athletes over the age of 35. Really helps prevent injuries and gives them this a bit more strength for hill climbing, whether it's running or cycling, and there's a lot of good benefits. But having said that, not everyone has the time to include the supplementary type training in their program. So it's a decision-making process of whether we spend a bit more time training, or do we just focus on the key things being swimming, cycling, and running. So it is going to vary. It is going to increase during the program as your fitness improves, if you've got the time available within your lifestyle to do so. Question from Humps: can I explain the 6x200 swim and the 4x50 meter swim again? So the broken the broken 200s. You start off by swimming 200 meters, having, I think for that session, I'm just going to flick back through my notes here quickly. It was a 30-second rest interval. So you swim your 200 meters, rest for 30 seconds, and then you swim 50 meters, rest for 10, the second 50, rest for 10, a third 50, rest for 10 seconds, fourth 50, rest for 10 seconds, and you repeat that whole thing 6 times. So after that fourth 50, into the second 200, another 30 seconds rest, 4 more 50s with those 10 seconds rest in between, back to the start for your third 200, and so on until you've done everything 6 times through. And so all up, you end up swimming 24 repetitions of 50 meters. Does that clear that up for you, John? Okay, we'll talk about that a bit more offline, John. But glad to hear that you've got that sorted now. Awesome. Cheers, mate. Okay, so equipment. The best bang for buck in terms of getting some massive improvements is investing in a power meter, and the prices of them are really starting to come down now. Race wheels are really good. You're literally buying yourself some time in the minutes over an Ironman distance, but the power meter you can use for your training right throughout the entire year. It'll target things, get it right down to the nitty-gritty, and we can get a lot more improvement with 6 to 9 months training with a power meter prior to an Ironman than what race wheels will do. Seen some pretty good improvements, enhancements with all my athletes that have changed or gone out and purchased a power meter. But even got a few athletes now that have multiple power meters on different bikes. So they've got a power meter on their time trial bike, power meter on their road bike, and that's what I do as well. I've got mine built into my race wheels as well as my training wheels. So it's a hub-based power tap system, and I use Tristan Thomas at Wheelworks in Wellington to build those wheels up for me. In terms of value, you're getting exceptional value. You're paying the same price for a custom-built wheel, and Tristan will talk about what your goals are, what type of events you're riding, how hilly they are, what the road surface is like, your build, your riding style, and give you some guidance on various components, hubs and rims and wheels and spokes, as well as the spoke pattern on the wheels can all greatly affect your ride quality. Particularly if you're talking over Ironman distance, you really want to have a comfortable, enjoyable ride. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to be trying to ride fast. So you do need to be able to enjoy that ride and get off the ride, or get off the bike and able to run well. There's a saying that if you hold back your effort on the bike by about 10 minutes, you'll gain about 30 minutes on the run. Whereas if you push the pace on the bike and push hard, you're going to lose that or more, especially if you end up walking. The other great tool that's a really great benefit is a GPS watch to run with, and we can set training zones based on pace, that we know physiologically what's going on. The key difference between training with a power meter cycling or a GPS watch running is that we're measuring exact outputs. Particularly with the power meter, we're measuring how much force your legs are generating, and that is a lot better than measuring with heart rate, because heart rate is a response to the intensity, whereas the force that your legs are generating to turn the pedals is your output, whereas the heart rate's the response to the output, and it's influenced by a whole range of things: temperature, your level of hydration, how well nourished you are, what sort of food you've got in your system, how much fuel you've got left, headwinds, tailwinds, environmental factors, temperature, whole range of things affect heart rate. So we can go pretty well with training by heart rate, but we can train excellently if we've got a power meter and utilizing that. Any questions? Yes, there is. Thanks, Linnea. Where can you buy a power meter? Most bike shops should be able to get one for you. I do recommend looking closely at what sort of power meter is going to suit you best, in terms of if you've got multiple bikes, or whether you've just got the one bike. Do you have race wheels and training wheels, or do you just have the one set of wheels? You can measure power in a number of different places. You can measure it in the hub, like I do on both my road and time trial bikes. I don't measure it on my mountain bike. You can measure it at the cranks, you can measure it at the pedals, and there's pros and cons to all these positions. If you can only afford one power meter and you want the ability to change it from bike to bike, then a wheel-based system is probably going to be the most easiest compared to a pedal or crank-based system. They do cost upwards of $1,000, so it's not a cheap investment. It's one I do recommend you look at closely. And I can send a link out to a really good summary. DC Rainmaker does a good summary each season of all the power meters on the market, how much they cost. It's US based, so the US prices, but it's transferable across to New Zealand. The pros and cons of each. So I'll just write a quick note that I'll send out a link to that for you all. Alrighty, no further questions. We'll move on. So this is Cindy. I've coached her to a number of events over the years. She's similar to Lisa, who I showed earlier. She initially came and saw myself and Andrea Borland, another Qwik Kiwi coach, about training for her first half Ironman. But this is her competing down in Challenge Wanaka. So she's had a number of successful races, working full time, training based around that as well. Alright, so from today, there's a few things I want you to get out of this and do, so you can make the most of the preparing for Ironman or an iron distance race next season. First of all, set some goals. Look at what exactly you want to achieve out of the event. Do you want to win the race? Do you want to set a personal best, or do you want to just finish it? Set your goals, make them SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, so that you can really focus in. Look at what you need to do to achieve it. Develop a plan, whether you go to a coach, myself or someone else, and start looking at putting together a plan, looking at what events you're going to use as the build-up races. How seriously are you going to take them? How do they fit in, and how do we manage the blocks of training leading up to and around those events? So you've got a good plan of training through to the event. And also, I want you to go out and deliberately arrange a support network. Now, within Qwik Kiwi, we've got a private Facebook group, and I'll just give you a quick example. And this is, I've cut this from within that, and Humps is here today. It's a very supportive and encouraging group of people I use for my athletes. When I have a chat to potential athletes that want me to coach them, what I'm looking for is how well are they going to fit into the Team Qwik Kiwi environment? Are they supportive? Are they going to be fitting in with the rest of the crew? And you can see here the types of support that each other give to people. And I know a number of these people on here haven't met each other. Susie lives up north. John is in Wellington. Barbara's down in Ashburton. Di's in Wairarapa. So there's a good geographic spread of people, and they haven't met, but they're still encouraging. We have a really good supportive team. So having that team around you, both your spouse and your family, but also having the support network from further afield to call on, that understand you a little bit more, can be really good. Now, before we go into the questions, I'm going to have a bit of a blatant promo. For those of you that are on the webinar tonight, if you contact me tonight prior to midnight for a free consultation, and we book that in, you'll get the consultation for free. So that's the first thing I want to offer you, is have a chat about your training. We'll schedule an hour, a phone consultation, have a chat about your training at a time that suits you or suits both of us. give you a bit more guidance and direction for you. If in that consultation you decide you want to be part of Team Qwik Kiwi, and I think that you're going to be a good fit for that, I'll offer you a couple of options. The first month 50% off, or the full program through to Ironman or Challenge, depending on what you're training for. If you pay for that in advance, I'll only charge you the $1,997, which is $1,000 off what I normally charge. So you've got two options there of some really good savings: 50% off the first month, or pay it fully in advance for under $2,000 for $1,000 off. Alrighty, so question time. So if you do want to take advantage of that consultation, drop me an email at ray@qwikkiwi.com. If you do want to purchase my 12 weeks to an Ironman swim PP book, go to Qwik Kiwi or qwik.kiwi, click on the store, and then go to the ebook 12 weeks to an Ironman swim PB. Fire away your questions. I'll stay online for as long as the questions keep coming through. But if you do want to connect with me elsewhere, I've got my blog, www.coachray.nz. The website about Qwik Kiwi, www.qwik.kiwi. On Facebook, you can find me or find us at Qwik Kiwi Endurance Sports Consultants. On Twitter, at Coach Ray NZ. At Instagram, at Coach_Ray_NZ. And on Strava, simply Qwik Kiwi. So feel free to fire away questions, or also contact me through those methods below. Not tonight, unfortunately, Naf. I don't go in depth in nutrition. HFLC, healthy fat, low carb, it's gaining a lot of popularity. There's a little bit of confusion about it. A lot of people say high fat, low carb, and then try and eliminate all carbs. It is important to still have some carbs and avoid the processed carbs. We're talking the processed sugars, the white breads, all the processed carbs. Avoid them. Stick to healthy, nutritious carbs, but in low quantities. So potatoes and kumara and rice, particularly brown rice as opposed to the white rice, really good. Healthy fats. Avoid all the processed stuff. Once again, the margarines, the half and halves, the various oils. Try and stick with natural stuff. Butter, getting a good source of fat within meat, and meat's providing you with good protein as well. Avocados are good sources of healthy fats as well. So healthy fat, low carbs, not high fat, no carb. I am working on a couple of nutrition things at the moment, Naf, as well. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be doing a few blog posts in the coming months, so you can get onto that, and maybe I might look at doing some webinars on nutrition as well. So hopefully the quick comments have helped you out there, Naf. See, you've got a question come in there, Lanier. What is a TT bike why is a TT bike so good for an Ironman compared to a road bike? Basically, it comes down to the positioning, Lanier. Getting a good bike position on a road bike is going to be better than a bad position on a TT bike. Having said that, a TT bike set up correctly will get you in a lot better position. So there's a number of people around the place. I remember I did a bike fit for you a few years ago. Was that correct? When I was based in Wellington. There's a few good people in Wellington. If you pop into iRide Bike on, I forget the key that's on, but if you pop into them, see Andrew in there, he's really good. There's another bike fitter that is really good. Used to own Penny Farthing Cycles, but he's now working at one of the other bike shops. He does, Shane Collett, he does a good bike fit. So there are some other people to go to. So regardless of whether it's a TT bike or a road bike, one that fits you well and is comfortable is going to be the best option. But a TT bike is going to be more aerodynamic once it's set up well, and is comfortable. Hopefully that's answered your question for you. If you do want a little bit further explanation on that, either Lanier or Naf, feel free to send through some more targeted or more specific questions. Does anyone else have any questions there? Now, Rod, it looks like you've tried to ask a question, but it hasn't come up. I'm getting a notification that you've asked a question, but I can't see it. So feel free to type that question into the question box again. Hopefully that will come through. Okay, sweet. I'm not sure why I'm getting the icon you've asked a question, Rod, but that's great if that's the case. Awesome work. If anyone else has any questions, here's one from John. What is the max number of Ironman distances per year one can do? It's going to depend on your ability to recover from each of them. If you do a couple back to back, so like Challenge Wanaka and then doubling up with Ironman, Ironman, you're not going to be the freshest for it because you've only had a couple of weeks recovery, but you can certainly do it on the training and doing not much in between. That means you can have a reasonable amount of time through to a later season Ironman and maybe get 3, maybe even 4 Ironmen out in a year. Certainly don't encourage people, unless they've got a good level of fitness, to try and do too many of them. As with most things, training-wise and racing-wise, it's personal ability and individual variability on a case-by-case basis to do it. We can talk about some of your goals because I know where you're leading those questions. Talk about them offline next time we have a bit of a catch-up. Alrighty, see another question come in from you, Naf. Do you look at the data from Training Peaks and give feedback on that? I certainly do. That's what I use to measure the success of a training week for an athlete. I then I look at it and say, right, how's that gone? Has it gone well? Do we need to adapt and modify next week's training? And there's a number of reasons why we may need to adapt and modify it. It could be the training's been going so well for the last few weeks. We can step up the ante and try and get a little bit more out of the training rather than taking it sort of 5 to 10% each time. If things are going really well consistently, we can push it 15, 20% for a week or two and then cut back to get a good training stimulus. If things aren't going well for whatever reason, Training Peaks is a really great way for, as a coach, for me to receive that feedback and make sure I adapt the training to adjust and account for the fact that it hasn't gone well. The key thing with any coach-athlete relationship is the communication needs to be two-way. The athlete talking to the coach and the coach talking to the athlete. Training, and you can talk to your coach or athlete or communicate with your coach or athlete through a number of different means. You've got all the normal means like actually face-to-face talking, but whether it's poolside or at the track or somewhere like that, there's catching up on the phone, communicating via Facebook message, text message, email, those sort of methods, but also viewing the data that you record, whether you're using a Garmin or a TomTom or some other brand of training tool, and collecting that data and then using that data to adapt and modify the training so the athlete is then always moving towards getting better from where they currently are. So it might have been 3 weeks ago you're in a lot better position, but work's come on or family commitments, and could have been someone pass away in your family. Hopefully not, but these sort of things all happen in real life, and training takes a back seat. So it might be when you start getting through to the end of whatever that extra stress in your life is, and you start getting a little bit more focus back to your training, a little bit more time to train, we can step things back up, always moving forward. So Training Peaks is essential for my coaching relationship with my athletes, so I can grasp that picture, see what's happening real time in their training, as well as having the other communication methods available to know the intricacies and what's going on in their life. If there's a lot of things going on, there's no point giving them extra long sessions and expecting them to continue moving forward. Hope that is of help for you there, Naf. Any other questions coming through? Okay, if there's no further questions coming through, I'll wrap things up there. Thanks for your comments there, Ben. Yep, we'll definitely chat to you next week. Awesome, Naf. I'll check my email once I get off this, and I'll reply to you as soon as I can. Thanks, John. We'll catch up in the near future. So just remember, if you do want to look at coming on board to Qwik Kiwi, I've got 3 slots left available within the team. So do make sure that you touch base, take advantage of that free consultation. We can have a chat about things and look at moving you forward to achieving your goals. Awesome work, everyone. Look forward to chatting with you again in the not too distant future, or seeing you on board a webinar again at some of the ones I'm planning in the future. Have a great Easter, and we'll keep in touch. Remember, feel free to connect with me through any of the social media down below: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Strava. If you do have any specific questions or got any ideas for future webinars, feel free to drop me an email. But drop me an email if you want to book a consultation anyway, and go to qwik.kiwi, click on the store in the menu, and feel free to grab that ebook for only $9 prior to Easter. Hey, awesome, Linnea. Once I get out of here, I'll reply to your email. That'll be great. I am reasonably booked up next week for consultations, so for you and Naf looking at coming on board, then we'll organise a time that we've got both available. That's me and you, and then me and Naf at separate times, in case you're wondering what that was relating to. Awesome work, everyone. Look forward to chatting again soon. If there is any last minute questions coming through, I'll hang online for a couple more minutes.